Once upon a time, there was an evil witch named the Wicked Witch of Baysville. When their parents weren't looking, she kidnapped a little boy and girl and put them in a canoe to bring back to her house in the forest. The children had heard of this witch and knew that they would never return home unless they were rescued. Luckily, Joe, the big black bear who lived nearby, spotted the children and decided that he would save them from the evil witch. But just as he was about to break down the door, this is the moment in the story where my grandpa had a miniature stroke and was unable to continue. My grandfather would tell my sister and me a story like this whenever we visited him in Canada. Sadly, this miniature stroke jump-started his Alzheimer's, which is a condition that destroys people's memory, thinking skills, and eventually takes away their ability to complete even the simplest of tasks. Because of this illness, he was never able to finish or start a story for us again. I always loved hearing the stories that my grandfather created, but in hindsight, I have realized that the best stories he ever told were the true ones. My grandfather lived a very exciting life, filled with adventures so exhilarating that they could be straight out of a Hollywood movie. He was a pilot for over 50 years and survived 5 plane crashes, flew dangerous prisoners from Canada to Libya, and avoided arrest in Italy on multiple occasions. Whenever he told stories about his adventures, a loud room in silence. Everyone stopped and listened intently to see how they would end. This is the power that a story can have. Knowing that they are real makes them even more exciting. I wish I'd asked him so many more questions about his life and adventures when I still had the chance. There are many great stories that will fade away with his memory, but thanks to the plethora that he shared over the years, many more will live on. He taught me that it is vital to live a life that will allow you to create great stories, and it is just as important to share them with others. My grandfather is a great man who did great things, but all of these things happened because of one reason: his perseverance. He truly never gave up. When he was younger, he was determined to be successful. In an attempt to make money, my grandfather tried to sell Christmas trees with a friend. They rented a truck and drove 3 hours north of their home in Toronto to cut down trees in the forest. On the way back, he took a turn that was too sharp and all of the trees fell out because they hadn't closed the truck properly. Once they salvaged the remaining trees, taking away gas costs and renting the truck, he and his friend barely broke even. But this misadventure didn't stop him. He was determined to be successful, so he started a carpet and flooring business, which did well. Then he moved into commercial real estate. One day, he made a deal with the Canadian government that if he made certain changes to 5 stories of an office building, they would rent out all of the space. He made all of the requested changes, which were very expensive, but the government backed out and said that they had never made such a deal. Since he didn't have it in writing, my grandfather lost his entire business. Once again, he didn't quit. An avid pilot, he sold both of his planes and became a partial owner of Sky Service, a Canadian airline, and got to fly air ambulances for him. He traveled the world and flew thousands of patients for life-saving treatments. The company then expanded, and his investment paid off. Through all of his stories, my grandfather taught me the importance of never giving up in a way that I will always remember. Along with this dedication to success, my grandfather had a sense of lightheartedness and humor that I've never seen anywhere else. His joyful nature and fun pranks earned him many lifelong friends. When his kids were younger, he used to hide in the woods and try to scare them, growling like a bear. He always told my cousins and me scary stories and tried to sneak up on us. My grandfather was able to turn any situation funny and lighten the mood. This attribute is what made me feel so close to him. I've always known him as someone who loves to play pranks and bend the rules for a good laugh. As long as no one was hurt, it was fair game. One time, when he was in Italy, he and his friends crossed the train tracks as a shortcut. They were then chased by the police through the streets of Florence and hid behind statues before eventually escaping. This story was not told to me by my grandfather, but by his best friend a couple of years ago. This proves to me that even though my grandfather could no longer tell stories, he lived an interesting enough life for other people to carry memories of him and share them like I'm doing today. What my grandfather was known best for is that he was always up for an adventure, and the stories that came from them have been told by many people all over the world. Many of the things about my grandfather still blow me away to this day. He was a professional water skier, a skydiver, the first person to own a Learjet in Canada, and he flew an air ambulance. One time, when he was flying for Sky Service, the Canadian government asked him to take a prisoner who was being sent back to Libya. On the way there, he received a call over the plane's radio. He was ordered to land in a nearby military base instead. My grandfather said that he wouldn't do that, since he was meeting the governor at the main airport to hand over the prisoner. He was then warned that if he didn't land at the base, he would be shot down. He landed the jet at the base, of course, but when he stepped out, there was no governor, just a group of many men with machine guns pointed at him. My grandfather and the police officers on board were ordered to hand over the prisoners or they would be shot. They begrudgingly complied. The armed men then drove away in jeeps. Soon after, as he was refueling the plane, the jeeps returned. My grandfather thought that this was the end for him. He later told us that this was the scariest moment of his life. However, the men just asked for the keys to the handcuffs and left. He survived. This was not the only time that my grandpa survived an extreme situation. One time, when he was landing a seaplane on a lake near his cottage, his landing gear wheels were stuck down, and it caused the plane to flip and sink when he hit the water. My grandmother was watching from the dock and passed out, thinking that she had just watched him die. My grandpa maintained calm and consciousness and waited 5 minutes for the plane to fill up with water before escaping. He then stood on top of the upside-down pontoon, soaking wet and holding his briefcase. When my grandmother arrived by a boat driven by the neighbor, he said, "Honey, I'm home, but I got a little wet." She fainted again. This was one of my favorite stories that he told me, because it taught me how important it is to stay calm under pressure and to find a way to make light of even the hardest situations. My grandfather often repeated a quote, "If you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much space." A fan of adventure, fun, and adrenaline rushes, he lived by these words every day that he was able to. Thanks to his unbelievable adventures, my grandfather's incredible spirit lives on in the stories that he shared. Even though Alzheimer's has made it impossible for him to have any more exciting adventures or to tell us further stories from his past, his amazing adventures will live forever as they are retold and passed on to the next generation. His stories have taught me many valuable lessons, and I hope that I have taught you the importance of living a life worthy of telling incredible stories about, so your spirit lives on for many years, long after your own memory fades.